Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Hey everyone, Nigel here. In case you missed our announcement earlier this week, we're going to be taking a bit of a break from Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International for the holiday season. Don't worry, we'll be back with all new episodes starting in January, but until then, we've got a bunch of fun and interesting compilations that we hope you'll enjoy. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the best stories from past Crimes of the Week episodes featuring heroes and Good Samaritans. One thing to keep in mind is that these segments have not been edited since they appeared in their respective lists, so references to specific days of the week as well as other small details may no longer apply. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Two Louisiana sanitation workers are being hailed as heroes this week after they helped police rescue a 10-year-old girl who had been kidnapped by a registered sex offender. The incident unfolded early on Monday when Dion Merrick and Brandon Antoine were on their pickup route near St. Martin Parish. The two men spotted a gray Nissan sedan parked in a field, which they recognized from a police alert about the missing girl. After calling 911, Merrick and Antoine moved their truck to block the vehicle so that the suspect couldn't escape. Police arrived on the scene shortly afterwards, taking the suspect, 33-year-old Michael Serial, into custody. He is currently being held without bond by the New Iberia Police Department. Merrick and Antoine have been praised for their quick thinking and decisive action. A truck driver in California is being praised for taking quick action this week after he blocked the path of a fleeing murder suspect during a high-speed vehicle chase, allowing police to make an arrest. According to reports, police had been chasing their suspect, 36-year-old Michael Caleb Reed, for more than an hour and across 3 California counties when they passed through the city of Pomona. At the same time, 44-year-old truck driver Ahmed Shaban was looking for a place to park his vehicle for the night. While on the phone with someone, he learned about the police chase and saw Reed coming his way. When Reed made a left-hand turn and attempted to speed through an intersection, Ahmed slammed on the gas of his truck, moving directly into Reed's path and causing him to slam into the right side of his vehicle. After that, police were able to take Reed into custody. Interestingly, Ahmed appears to have been in the area that day by complete accident. He had originally driven to the Los Angeles area from his home in San Diego to pick up a load, but found that another driver had taken it by mistake when he arrived. He would have been headed elsewhere at the time of the chase if he had picked up the load as planned. Ahmed says he is unsure if his insurance will cover the damage to his vehicle, since he got into the accident on purpose. However, a GoFundMe account for Ahmed has already raised more than $51,000 to help him get back on the road. A 52-year-old man is being praised for his heroism this week after he successfully intervened in an unprovoked stabbing attack against a woman on a New York City subway platform. The incident took place at approximately 10 p.m. on Wednesday, when 54-year-old Kelly Daly was waiting for her train at a Union Square station in Manhattan. She felt someone come up behind her and give her what felt like a hug before she began to be repeatedly stabbed in her back, neck, and shoulders. The alleged attacker, 22-year-old Joshua Nazario, seemed to have targeted her completely at random. That's when Sean Conaboy, a freelance cameraman for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, decided to intervene. He tackled Nazario to the ground and fought with him, managing to keep him restrained until authorities could arrive. According to Nazario's family, he suffers from schizophrenia and recently ran out of medication. His aunt says that his doctor did not prescribe him anymore, and she wasn't sure why. She also said that Nazario had never been violent in the past. Thankfully, Daly was rushed to the hospital and was reportedly treated for non-life-threatening injuries. She is expected to survive. Authorities in Delaware say that a suspected serial killer is in custody this week thanks to the actions of a Rite Aid cashier who placed a GPS tracking device in his bag during a robbery. The arrest took place on Tuesday morning, shortly after police say that 39-year-old Keith Gibson robbed the drugstore on West 4th Street in Wilmington. During the armed robbery, the employee slipped the tracking device into his bag of cash before handing it over. Gibson was arrested about 1 block away, armed with a knife and a loaded gun, and wearing a bulletproof vest. Police say that Gibson is currently being investigated in at least 6 homicides in Delaware and Pennsylvania, including the murder of his own mother, 54-year-old Christine Gibson. Christine was found dead at her office in February, where she worked as a mental health counselor. Gibson is also suspected to be behind the murders of Philadelphia Dunkin' Donuts manager Christine Lugo last Saturday, a Metro PCS cell phone store manager in Ellesmere in May, as well as 2 men who were shot and killed at a store in North Philadelphia in January. Authorities say they are currently performing ballistics tests on a weapon that could link Gibson to the killings. Gibson reportedly had a substantial criminal history prior to these recent crimes, and was just paroled last year after serving time for a manslaughter conviction.
This week, authorities in Portland, Oregon announced that a recent active shooting incident had miraculously resulted in injuries only to the suspect after neighbors intervened and detained him until police could arrive. According to reports, the situation unfolded at approximately 1 a.m. on June 29th at the Stevens Creek Crossing apartment complex in southwest Portland. That's when an altercation began between 32-year-old Luke Stolarczyk and another resident at the complex named Kenneth Nelson. Witnesses allege that Stolarczyk became enraged after Nelson's dog got loose from the apartment and the 2 men began shouting at each other. After the fight was briefly broken up by another neighbor named John Dixon, it seemed like the fight was over. However, Stolarczyk went back to his home and grabbed a rifle, after which he began to fire in the direction of Nelson in his apartment. During the attack, nearly 30 rounds were fired, hitting cars and homes in the densely populated complex. When the shooting started, Dixon grabbed a stick and managed to sneak up on Stolarczyk, who is said to have been highly intoxicated at the time. After smacking Stolarczyk in the back of the head, Dixon managed to wrestle the weapon away and proceeded to beat him into unconsciousness. Other neighbors helped Dixon hogtie Stolarczyk until authorities could arrive. Stolarczyk was arrested on Monday after spending several days in the hospital. Police say that he was the only one injured during the attack. He reportedly has a history of alcohol abuse and mental health issues, and has used guns in the past to threaten himself and family members. Stolarczyk now faces numerous charges, including attempted murder. Authorities in Yuma County, Arizona say that 3 suspects who attempted to rob a gas station got more than they bargained for this week when their plan was quickly foiled by an ex-Marine. According to reports, James Kelser had just finished making an early morning purchase at the Chevron gas station around 4:30 a.m. on October 20th when the 3 suspects walked in. As he was turning to leave the store, Kelser said he heard the door open aggressively, causing him to realize that something bad was about to happen. That's when he noticed the suspect at the front of the group was armed with a handgun. Realizing that the first suspect was the only one of the trio that was armed, Kelser wasted no time, grabbing the gun with one hand and using his bag full of purchased items to strike the would-be robber in the head. According to Kelser, the bag contained a couple of Gatorades, 2 energy drinks, and a snack. It turned out to be more than enough to take care of the suspect, who was knocked to the ground, disarmed, and subsequently detained by Kelser until authorities could arrive. His 2 accomplices ran and managed to escape. Though at the time of this recording the 2 accomplices remain at large, thankfully no one was seriously hurt during the foiled robbery. Kelser credits his ability to defuse the situation to his Marine Corps training, which he said gave him the muscle memory and mental preparedness to know how to act. The suspect who was taken into custody has not been identified by name, but is said to be a juvenile.
This week, police officials in West Palm Beach, Florida, gathered to honor a 9-year-old girl for bravery after she recently fought off an attacker who mugged her mother. According to reports, the terrifying incident occurred on November 2nd, when 9-year-old Journey Nelson and her mother Danielle Mobley were walking to their car after shopping at a local supermarket. As Danielle was putting the groceries they had just purchased in the back of the car, a man, who has since been identified as 29-year-old Demetrius Jackson, ran up to her and tackled her to the ground. As Jackson struggled on the ground with Danielle for her purse, 9-year-old Journey reportedly sprang into action, running around the car to help her mother. Without hesitation, she began to throw as many punches as she could at Jackson's face. Though Journey was pushed to the ground by Jackson, who managed to take off with Danielle's purse, she still chased after him for 5 blocks before he got away. The police later caught up with Jackson, and he was arrested and charged with robbery and battery. While authorities generally recommend against members of the public taking matters into their own hands in situations like this, they commended Journey for her bravery in trying to stick up for her mother. Speaking about CCTV footage that captured the robbery taking place, West Palm Beach Police Chief Frank Adderley commented that it looked like Journey had hit Jackson pretty hard. In addition to a medal, Journey was presented with a Target gift card at a celebration in her honor this week.
A trio of would-be robbers allegedly got more than they bargained for this week when they attempted to violently steal money from a local pizza shop, and one of them was shot in the face. According to reports, the incident took place around 10 p.m. on December 9th when the 3 suspects walked into Bold Pizza in Philadelphia's Spring Garden neighborhood. After entering, the men allegedly tried to steal cash from the shop's register, and when an employee resisted, one of the men started to choke her. Within moments, the woman's 14-year-old son reportedly sprung into action, grabbing a handgun from below the counter and shooting the man who was choking his mom in the face. After that, all 3 suspects apparently ran. A short time later, police who responded to the incident were able to find the injured suspect in a nearby subway station by following a trail of blood. Authorities allegedly received further confirmation of the man's involvement when they found a large amount of stolen cash stuffed in his pocket. The suspect, who has only been identified as a 33-year-old man, was taken to the hospital, where he reportedly remains in critical condition. At the time of this recording, police say that they are still searching for the other 2 suspects involved in the attempted robbery. It's believed that the group might have also been involved in the robbery of a CVS drugstore about a block away from the pizza shop just a short time before. Anyone with information is encouraged to contact Philadelphia police.
Authorities in New Orleans, Louisiana, say that a would-be mugger recently got more than he bargained for after he assaulted the mother of a teenage powerlifter who proceeded to chase him down and tackle him. According to reports, on December 28th, 18-year-old Messina Tupea was simply enjoying her vacation with her parents when out of nowhere, a man sprinted towards her 47-year-old mother Louisa as the family walked down Magazine Street. Before any of them could react, the man had punched Louisa in the jaw, dislocating it, and tried to steal her purse. Though the attacker soon gave up on his attempt to steal the purse and tried to flee the scene, Messina decided she couldn't let him escape and sprung into action. The teenager managed to catch up to the suspect when he was tripped by a bystander. However, the first time she tried to grab him, he punched her in the face and continued to run away. Undeterred, Messina began pursuing the attacker once again, soon catching up to him in an area where her father was chasing him around a car. After dodging another one of the attacker's punches, she grabbed onto the back of his shirt, then tackled him to the ground. The attacker tried desperately to escape, but it was no use. What the attacker didn't know about Messina is that despite being just 5 feet 5 inches tall, she is extremely strong. A lifelong athlete and avid powerlifter, Messina still holds a record in the sport from when she was 15, when she deadlifted nearly 320 pounds. Messina was able to keep her mother's attacker pinned until police could arrive, at which point he was arrested. The man was subsequently identified as 36-year-old Augustus Taylor, who is now facing 1 charge for purse snatching and 2 others for simple battery. According to reports, Taylor has pleaded guilty to battery charges in New Orleans at least 4 times since 2010. Despite the unfortunate incident, Messina said that she and her family still enjoyed their trip. In interviews with local media, she said, quote, "My parents told me that stuff happens, but you can't let stuff like that affect how you perceive places. Although it sucks it happened to us, we're glad someone like that is off the street." While it's more the aftermath of the crime than the crime itself that's noteworthy in this case, we decided to include this next story on today's list since we thought most of you would get a kick out of it like we did. An officer from South Dakota's Sioux Falls Police Department is being lauded for going above the call of duty this week after he arrested a DoorDash driver during a food delivery and decided to complete the delivery himself. According to reports, the incident took place on the afternoon of January 25th, when Officer Sam Burr pulled over a DoorDash driver for an undisclosed traffic violation, only to discover that they had a warrant out for their arrest. After taking the driver into custody, Burr evidently decided that it wasn't fair to the DoorDash customer to miss out on their Arby's order just because of the driver's legal troubles, and he proceeded to take the food the rest of the way to its final destination. The decision resulted in an amusing interaction between Burr and the woman who had ordered the food, who was surprised and delighted to find him standing at her door with her order. The whole thing was captured on the woman's Ring doorbell camera, where Burr could be heard saying, "I know I'm not who you were expecting, but your driver got arrested for some things he didn't take care of, so I figured I'd complete the DoorDash for you." At the time of this recording, no information has been reported on what the warrant was for that led to the driver's arrest. Representatives from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Kansas City, Missouri, say that a 50-year-old man has been arrested and is facing charges this week after he allegedly became unruly while aboard a plane and tried to open one of its doors mid-flight. According to reports, the incident took place on the afternoon of February 13th, while American Airlines Flight 1775 was on its way from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. While it's unclear exactly how the commotion began, midway through the flight, one of the passengers, later identified as 50-year-old Juan Rivas, began to create a disturbance. Things escalated when Rivas allegedly walked into the cockpit area of the plane, grabbing a plastic utensil and holding it like a shank. He then reportedly grabbed a small champagne bottle, which he tried to break on a counter before kicking and shoving a drink service cart into one of the flight attendants. Finally, Rivas grabbed the handle of one of the plane's exit doors and began wrenching on it, trying to get it open. Thinking quickly, one of the flight attendants grabbed a nearby coffee pot and hit Rivas twice in the head. This slowed him down enough that several other people were able to intervene, successfully bringing Rivas to the floor. Apparently, this was no small feat. Rivas is reportedly 6'3" and 240 pounds, and it took at least 4 people, one of whom was a police officer, to properly restrain him. Once the 50-year-old's hands and feet were secured with zip ties and duct tape, the plane made an emergency landing at Kansas City International Airport, where Rivas was arrested. At the time of this recording, Rivas has been charged with 1 count of assaulting and intimidating a flight attendant and thereby interfering in the performance of their duties. He remains in police custody. A 47-year-old trooper from the Florida Highway Patrol is being called a hero this week after she put herself in harm's way in order to stop a suspected drunk driver from crashing into participants in a local charity event. According to reports, the incident began on the morning of March 6th, when runners were in the midst of the Skyway 10K marathon event. For those unfamiliar, the race is held semi-annually, and according to their website, is done to benefit the Armed Forces Families Foundation. The event takes place on the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which connects the city of St. Petersburg to Manatee County, and generally attracts thousands of participants and volunteers. At around 8:45 a.m. that morning, members of the Florida Highway Patrol received word that a driver in a BMW, subsequently identified as 52-year-old Kristen Watts, was speeding northbound on Interstate 275 towards the direction of the Skyway 10K. When Watts reached the road closure at Highway 41, advising her that the Skyway Bridge was closed and pointing her towards a detour, she ignored it, continuing to drive towards the bridge. From here, Watts allegedly proceeded to blow past several additional checkpoints, going around barricades and traffic cones and maneuvering past police officers while still driving at high speeds. Eventually, she even managed to drive past officers guarding the toll plaza. At this point, additional troopers in the south rest area of the race were alerted to an oncoming vehicle. One of the people who received this call was 47-year-old Master Trooper Tony Shuck, a 26-year-old veteran of Florida law enforcement. Deciding there was no time to waste, Shuck allegedly sprang into action, driving her highway patrol SUV in the direction of Watts' BMW. When Shuck saw Watts, she blocked the road with her vehicle, placing herself directly in harm's way. Watts still did not stop, leading to a serious head-on collision. Though both women received serious injuries as a result of the crash, Shuck's maneuver successfully brought the situation to an end. According to reports, Watts was arrested following the crash, where it was quickly suspected that she was under the influence of alcohol. Watts is now facing several charges, including DUI causing serious injury, DUI causing property damage, and 2 counts of reckless driving involving injury and property damage. While authorities say that they do not believe that Watts was intentionally trying to drive into the charity marathon, if her first court appearance is any indication, it doesn't seem that she is exactly remorseful for her alleged actions either. During the proceedings, she laughed when asked if she would have trouble making it to further court appearances, saying, quote, "Considering I don't have a car, I'll have to fix that, I guess." At the time of this recording, Shuck is at home recovering from a concussion and a head wound, but thankfully appears to be otherwise okay. Authorities in Memphis, Tennessee are crediting a local fast food employee with helping to save a kidnapping victim this week, after the employee noticed a note that the victim had left behind, begging for help. According to reports, the incident began at around 5 p.m. on May 15th, when officers from the Memphis Police Department received a call about a potential kidnapping situation at a Kentucky Fried Chicken in the city's Hickory Hills neighborhood. When police arrived at the scene, they were greeted by one of the fast food restaurant's employees, who explained that they had found a note that they believed had been left behind by a female customer who was recently in the store. The woman had been accompanied by a man, and her note stated that she was in desperate need of help. Not only did the keen eye of the KFC employee lead to the recovery of the note in the first place, but thanks to a description they provided of the victim and her alleged abductor, police were able to track the pair down a short time later. When they did, the male suspect took off running, though was quickly captured and arrested. He has since been identified as 23-year-old Diego Glay. When police questioned the female victim, she told them that she had indeed left behind the note at the KFC. She said that she had been in a relationship with Glay, but that when she had tried to break up with him, he had held her against her will and physically assaulted her. She said that Glay had been forcing her to stay with him in cheap hotels around the city, during which time he had threatened her with a handgun. At the time of this recording, Glay remains in police custody and is being held on a $35,000 bond. Authorities in Clark County, Washington say that a suspected serial armed robber got more than he bargained for this week when he tried to hold up a gas station convenience store and was attacked by the store's cashier with a can of bug spray. According to reports, the incident took place recently in the city of Vancouver when the suspect entered a local B&B mart. After heading up to the cash register and placing a drink on the counter, he reached into his pocket as if to pull out his wallet, but instead pulled out a handgun. The man proceeded to point the weapon at the store clerk, Amber Maley, telling her to put all of the money in the register into a bag. However, rather than complying with the suspect's terrifying demand, Amber immediately sprung into action, grabbing a large can of bug spray directly to her right. She then began to unload as much of the spray as she could in the man's direction while shouting at him to get out. Spooked by Amber's quick and aggressive attempt to fight back, the suspect immediately fled the scene of the bungled robbery, empty-handed. Though the suspect managed to escape and his identity is currently unknown, authorities have released images of him taken from surveillance footage captured at the convenience store. Police now say that they believe he is a serial robber who may be responsible for more than 30 similar crimes in Clark County and the Portland metro area. His list of previous targets reportedly includes coffee shops, hotels, restaurants, and auto parts stores, and in each case, he is said to have been armed. Authorities are now asking for anyone with information about the suspect to come forward, in the hopes that he can be successfully identified and taken into custody. He is described as a man between 30 and 35 with brown hair and a brown beard, roughly 5 feet 8 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, and weighing 160 pounds. Though police have warned members of the public from confronting the suspect directly like Amber did, according to her, The idea of giving him the money like he demanded never even crossed her mind. In a recent interview, she said that her instinct to protect herself was automatic, and that in the moment, all that she knew for sure was that she wanted the armed criminal out of her space. Authorities in Hillsborough County, Florida are praising the actions of a quick-thinking Good Samaritan this week after she intervened in a situation that didn't feel right to her and allegedly thwarted an attempted kidnapping. According to reports, the situation began at around 6 p.m. on June 12th, when two girls under the age of 12 left a restaurant called Cherry's Bar and Grill in the community of Fishhawk. The girls were heading through the park square when they encountered a strange man who began to follow them, later identified as 37-year-old David Daniels. Daniels eventually caught up with the two girls, telling them that he was going to, quote, supervise their way home. As the two terrified girls continued on their way, Daniels allegedly became increasingly more aggressive towards them, at one point allegedly striking one of them in the head multiple times. The victims were unsure what to do and believed that they were being kidnapped. The harrowing situation continued until the girls passed a local church, where a woman was standing outside. Upon seeing Daniels and the two girls, the woman immediately got a bad feeling. Further red flags went up when one of the girls turned towards her and appeared to mouth something, which she thought was, quote, please help me. This is not my dad. That's when Daniels reportedly put his arm around the girl's neck in a sort of headlock and whispered something in her ear. Deciding she had to do something, the woman at the church engaged Daniels in conversation, hoping to delay him for a while so that she could figure out what was going on. Daniels claimed that he and the girls had just moved to the area and that they wanted to help out at the church. Unconvinced by this story, the woman invited the girls into the church while continuing to talk to Daniels. Pretending to play along, she asked him where he had moved from, to which he apparently replied, I'm not really sure. Though Daniels eventually walked away, the woman at the church was able to call police, who were able to track him down and place him under arrest. The girls, meanwhile, were able to stay at the church until they could be safely taken home. According to other reports we came across, this is apparently the second disturbing incident involving children that Daniels has been involved in the last couple of weeks. Earlier this month, he also allegedly followed a young girl at a park in the city of Foley, Alabama, though because of the details in that case, he was only charged with criminal trespassing and public intoxication. He was reportedly bonded out of jail by his mother the following day, before being taken to Florida for psychiatric help. This week's incident happened upon his release from psychiatric care. In connection with this incident, Daniels is now facing multiple charges, including false imprisonment of a child, and is being held on $104,000 bond. As for the Good Samaritan, who may have prevented a much more serious crime from taking place this week, she has apparently asked to remain anonymous. She said that she does not want any recognition for her actions and that she doesn't consider herself any kind of hero. Rather, that she just did what she hoped anybody would do for her own children. A 30-year-old alleged thief reportedly got more than he bargained for this week when he attacked a 7-Eleven employee and was taken down by a man with more than 2 decades of martial arts training who happened to witness the heated confrontation. According to reports, the incident took place sometime on June 16th, when a man named Idris Rejovic went to buy a couple of Slurpees for his kids at a 7-Eleven store in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood. As he walked up to the location, he noticed a man, later identified as 30-year-old Christopher Cruz, who appeared to be harassing a group of people outside. When Cruz noticed that Idris was witnessing the harassment, he reportedly turned to him aggressively and asked him what he was looking at. Idris stood his ground and did not engage, but continued to keep an eye on Cruz. When Cruz walked into the 7-Eleven, it apparently initially seemed like things were over. However, once inside the convenience store, Cruz began to act aggressively once again when he was asked to leave by one of the store's 19-year-old employees. According to the employee, Cruz had been in there earlier that day and had been caught stealing. When confronted by the employee, Cruz allegedly punched him in the head. That's when Idris sprung into action. You see, unbeknownst to Cruz at the time, Idris is a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and has been studying the martial art for 22 years. As soon as Idris saw the confrontation between Cruz and the employee turn violent, he jumped into the situation and put his training into action, taking the 30-year-old to the ground and, in his own words, quote, flattening him like a pancake and tying him up like a pretzel in a position called gift wrap or twisting arm control. Though Cruz quickly realized he was outmatched and reportedly pleaded with Idris to let him go, the black belt denied, pinning him down for 18 minutes until police arrived. Cruz was then taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of retail theft and battery. If you're impressed with Idris's skills, apparently he runs a facility of his own called the Supreme Academy of Jiu-Jitsu, where he teaches students as young as 5 years old. The business is located in Lincoln Park, close to where the incident at 7-Eleven took place. Authorities in St. Charles, Missouri say that a 26-year-old man is being lauded for his courage and quick thinking this week after he thwarted an early morning armed robbery at a gas station where he just happened to have stopped for a bathroom break. According to reports, the situation began at around 3:20 a.m. on July 16th, when the 26-year-old witness, who was asked to remain anonymous, pulled into a Quick Trip gas station on First Capitol Drive. He needed to use the bathroom and decided he would stop and buy something as well. When the 26-year-old finished his business, he walked back out to his car, but began to become suspicious when he saw another vehicle, a black SUV, pull up at the station. The driver, a man, appeared to be in a hurry and quickly exited the vehicle while carrying a backpack. Unbeknownst to the 26-year-old witness, this man, later identified as 26-year-old Lance Bush, was in the middle of an alleged violent crime spree. In fact, according to police, he had just robbed 2 other gas stations in the area, injuring at least 1 employee when he attacked her with a knife. As the 26-year-old witness stood near his car and watched Bush head into the Quick Trip that morning, something apparently came over him, and he decided to go and check the situation out. He poked his head into the store and asked if everything was all right, only to realize that Bush was holding a knife to an employee's throat. Luckily for the 26-year-old, when he went to investigate the situation in the Quick Trip, he brought his handgun, which he had on him at the time. He had just started to confront Bush when Bush said, quote, "I have something for you," before allegedly rushing at him with his hand in his backpack. The 26-year-old fired 4 shots, and Bush fell to the ground. When police were called to the scene, they were already in the midst of investigating the first 2 robberies in the area, and the crimes were quickly connected. The same black SUV, which was later proven to have been stolen, was spotted at the first crime scene, and stolen items from the second gas station were apparently found in the vehicle. Though Bush was rushed to the hospital following the shooting, he was soon pronounced dead. While the 26-year-old witness was briefly detained after the incident, it said that he has since been released and is not facing any charges. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation. Representatives from Florida's Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office are commending a young fast food restaurant employee for his courage this week after he came to the aid of a mother and her baby who were being carjacked by a 43-year-old man. According to reports, the incident began sometime on September 14th when the suspect, later identified as 43-year-old William Branch, approached the victim and her infant in the parking lot of a Chick-fil-A restaurant in the city of Fort Walton Beach. As the mother was busy trying to get her baby out of the vehicle, Branch allegedly began waving a stick at her and demanding her car keys. He then grabbed the keys from her waistband and opened her car door to get inside. That's when the woman began screaming for help. Upon hearing the commotion and realizing what was happening, one of the fast food restaurant's employees, a young man named Michael Gordon, immediately sprung into action. He reportedly ran at Branch without a second thought, and after a brief struggle where he was punched in the face, managed to place Branch in a headlock and take him to the ground. Once subdued, Branch apparently stopped struggling and waited for police to arrive and place him under arrest. He has now been charged with carjacking with a weapon and battery. The female victim and her baby were both uninjured. Though Michael has understandably been praised for his actions in the aftermath of this week's incident, it turns out that this is not the first time he's actually been in a situation like this. According to reports, back in September of 2018, he was working the drive-thru at the same Chick-fil-A restaurant when a crane fell onto a vehicle on a nearby road. Just like he did this week, Michael immediately dropped what he was doing and ran to help. He was apparently one of the first to arrive at the scene and ended up carrying one of the vehicle's passengers from the wreck. According to the operator of the Chick-fil-A restaurant in Fort Walton Beach, Michael has been working for the company for 14 years. He described him as an outstanding team member, and speaking about this week's incident, said, quote, "I couldn't be prouder of his incredible act of care." Diners at a California ramen restaurant were allegedly treated to quite the terrifying and bizarre spectacle last week when a team of servers dressed in Power Rangers costumes were forced to become real-life superheroes while coming to the defense of an assault victim. According to reports, the incident took place sometime on the evening of October 14th at Noka, a Thai-owned ramen shop in Oakland's Jack London Square. The mood was playful that evening, as the restaurant was doing a weekly drink promotion for one of its cocktails. The drinks are served in special Power Rangers-themed mugs, and as part of the fun, servers dress up as the beloved 90s superheroes to add to the atmosphere. Little did these employees know, however, that they were about to be taking this role-playing experience to a whole other level. According to Ploy Pirapokan, who was having dinner at Noka when everything unfolded, it started when a woman came rushing into the restaurant looking frantic and saying that she wasn't safe. Before anyone could even take in what the woman was saying, a man came running in behind her. Terrified, the woman managed to yell that she didn't want to go home with this man, as he proceeded to put her in a chokehold. Realizing that something needed to be done, the restaurant's manager, who was reportedly dressed as the Black Power Ranger, told the man to leave. He was accompanied by another employee dressed as the Yellow Ranger. Distracted, the attacker reportedly let the woman go and turned his attention to the two Rangers. As he did, other staff members ushered the woman into the kitchen so that she could hide. Then, the man began to take swings at the two Rangers who had stopped him. The Yellow Ranger reportedly blocked the hits. After allegedly resorting to calling the staff members a bunch of racial slurs, the man apparently tried to get to the restaurant's kitchen where the woman was hiding, but once again was stopped by the Yellow Ranger, who grabbed him by the collar and dragged him out of the restaurant. While this initially seemed to be the end of things, according to reports, despite repeated calls, police took quite some time to arrive. This allegedly gave the male suspect enough time to return to the scene once again, this time accompanied by another man. When he did, he reportedly continued his destructive behavior, picking up whatever he could and throwing it at the restaurant's windows. Once again, the employees sprung into action, this time with multiple Power Rangers getting involved in the fray. They allegedly piled onto the assailants, managing to push them through the doors, which they then locked to prevent them from getting back inside. After this, the suspect apparently seemed to lose interest in the restaurant, allegedly starting another fight nearby until police finally arrived and placed him under arrest. At the time of this recording, neither his name nor the name of the female victim had been released, and authorities allege that during the attack, the suspect was suffering some kind of a mental health crisis. As for the so-called Noka Power Rangers, not only are they now being commended for trying to keep everyone safe, but in another classy move, after the dust settled, the restaurant reportedly told all of the customers who were there at the time that their meals were free. Authorities in Houston County, Georgia are praising a local man's heroic actions this week after he allegedly saved a child during the middle of a violent attack. According to reports, the incident began sometime on November 6th when Kelsey Willis was at a Walmart in the city of Warner Robins. He had stopped at the location for an oil change and was waiting for his car to be finished, when all of a sudden he heard something that caught his attention. It sounded like a screaming child. When Willis walked a little ways into the parking lot to investigate, he saw the child being pulled from a vehicle by an older man. The man proceeded to walk the boy around the side of the store before disappearing out of sight. Though Willis initially thought that the older man might have taken the child to use the bathroom, that all changed when he started hearing the yelling once again. This time, it was much more intense, and it made him worried enough to investigate. By the time he ran around the building, he realized that the sounds were coming from a nearby wooded area. To his horror, after following the noises, Willis came face to face with the older man, who was now in the middle of attacking the boy. The child had allegedly been thrown to the ground and was being viciously strangled. That's when Willis pulled out his gun. According to reports, Willis was able to safely get the boy away from the older man before contacting police. He held the suspect at gunpoint until officers arrived and placed him under arrest. The man has since been identified as 67-year-old Chaim Noreen Dubé and is said to be a relative of the boy. While the exact circumstances that led up to the horrific crime remain a mystery, Willis says that he fears the child might have died if Dubé had been allowed to continue the assault. He claims that after being rescued, the boy explained that before the attack, Dubé had threatened that he was going to, quote, beat him and leave him for the animals. The 67-year-old has now been charged with aggravated assault and cruelty towards a child. Authorities in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania are commending the actions of a 10-year-old boy and a teenage retail worker this week after their quick thinking helped to thwart an attempted kidnapping. According to reports, the situation started sometime on the afternoon of November 11th when 10-year-old Sammy Green was on his way home from school. It was a walk that the fourth grader had made dozens of times before, but which that day would take a disturbing turn. As Sammy was in the middle of his journey, he was approached by a woman he didn't know. The woman started asking him questions, where he was going, where his family was, and most chillingly of all, whether he wanted to go with her instead. Sensing something was off about the woman, Sammy tried his best to continue on, but he soon realized that he was being followed. Though obviously terrified and initially unsure what to do, Sammy started to think and remembered something that his dad had told him. Act casual, but look for another person to help. Taking his dad's advice, Sammy walked into one of his favorite local stores, a one-of-a-kind gift shop called Danny B. Funky. As soon as he did, he approached the 17-year-old cashier, Hannah Daniels, and asked her to pretend that she was his mom. Hannah says that when Sammy walked into the store, she immediately noticed that he looked scared. But because of the way the strange woman was following him, she initially assumed that the stranger was his mother. However, as soon as Sammy explained what was going on, Hannah immediately took action. She told Sammy to wait in the store's back room, and she walked to the store's front entrance, where the woman was still holding the door open, and forced it closed before locking it. She then called the police. Though the woman left before police could arrive, they immediately recognized her from the store's surveillance footage. She is reportedly a local homeless woman who suffers from mental health issues. Sammy's family say that they are not pressing charges, but that the woman has now been referred for mental health help. In the meantime, they say that they are proud of the way both Sammy and Hannah handled the situation, but that Sammy will have a family friend walking him home from now on. An NYPD officer is being credited with saving a suspect's life this week after he threatened to jump from a skyscraper during the middle of an arrest. According to reports, the incident began sometime on March 23rd when federal agents arrived at the 31st floor residence of Ian Mitchell, located near Carnegie Hall. The 35-year-old had been accused of wire fraud in connection with an investment scam dating back to 2015. In which he allegedly conned investors out of thousands of dollars while pretending to be the son of a wealthy family from Jamaica. However, when agents made their way into Mitchell's apartment, he refused to come quietly. Instead, he shattered one of the building's windows, pulled himself through the opening, and threatened to jump to his death. A tense standoff ensued, during which time authorities tried to reason with Mitchell while he dangled his feet over the edge of the building. A large inflatable cushion was also set up at ground level in the event that Mitchell tried to jump. After several hours of failed negotiations, though, it was clear that authorities weren't getting anywhere. That's when a detective with the NYPD's Emergency Services Unit decided to take a different approach. The detective, later identified as James Tobin, went into the apartment directly above Mitchell. He then secretly rappelled down, and before Mitchell could react, kicked him back through the window inside. At that point, the 35-year-old was safely arrested. In the aftermath of the incident, Tobin was praised for helping to bring the situation to an end without any loss of life. Mitchell, meanwhile, was taken to a hospital for evaluation and reportedly remains in custody at this time. Authorities in Tampa, Florida say that a former professional wrestler turned security guard likely saved many lives this week after he put his skills to use and managed to take down an armed attacker who was trying to gain entry to the club where he was working. The incident began at around 1:15 a.m. on March 19th when Manny Resto was working the door at Tampa's famous Mons Venus strip club. It was just an ordinary night for the 54-year-old security guard, when suddenly he saw a large man in a devil mask walking towards the club's door. At first, Manny thought it was one of his bouncer friends playing a prank on him. After all, they knew about his former career in professional wrestling, where he had worn his fair share of colorful costumes under his wrestler name, the Puerto Rican Punisher. However, when Manny spotted the gun in the man's hand, he quickly realized this wasn't a joke. Before the man was able to enter the club, Manny grabbed him by the arm and pulled him back outside, initiating a confrontation. Though Manny was able to knock the weapon out of the attacker's hand and picked it up and pointed it at him, the man refused to back down. The fight continued for several more seconds until finally two other security guards at the club came to Manny's aid, and the three men together were able to pin the attacker to the ground. Though one round was fired from the gun during the struggle, it hit the club's door. None of the roughly 200 people inside were injured. When police arrived at the scene, the suspect, later identified as 44-year-old Michael Rudman, was placed under arrest. A search of Rudman's person revealed that in addition to the 9mm handgun, he had also brought 2 loaded magazines. In his truck, police found 9 knives, 2 holsters, and more loose ammunition. In the aftermath of the incident, police praised Manny Resto and the other 2 bouncers who took down Rudman, saying that they had likely saved many lives. The chief of Tampa Police said he was immediately reminded of the 2016 shooting at Orlando's Pulse nightclub, saying that this is possibly the kind of disaster that was averted. At the time of this recording, Rudman is facing charges including aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, battery, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. According to reports, his prior criminal record includes offenses such as domestic violence, battery, reckless driving, and DUI. He also had an active wrist protection order due to his mental state, meaning that any weapons he had should have been confiscated by authorities. Right now, police say that the circumstances under which Rudman obtained the handgun used in this week's incident are still under investigation.
Representatives from Pennsylvania's Brookhaven Police Department are thanking a local pizza delivery man this week after he lent them a hand, or should we say a foot, during the middle of a chase. According to reports, the incident took place at around 3 p.m. on April 16th when Tyler Morrell, a driver for Coco's Pizza Aston, was out on a delivery to a home in Brookhaven. He was walking up to the door of the residence when he noticed something strange. A dark car was driving across a lawn across the street, and it was being pursued by 2 police cars. Tyler watched for a few seconds as the suspect proceeded to pull back onto the road and then hop out of his vehicle and start running in the opposite direction. As the man began running down the sidewalk, Tyler seized his moment. After backing away for a brief second, Tyler stuck out his leg when the suspect ran by, tripping him and sending him flying. The man was then promptly arrested by police. While no details are currently available about the suspect or why police were chasing him, officers from the Brookhaven Police Department have since come out on social media to say they were grateful for Tyler's help. Tyler himself said, quote, "I was raised to step in if you see something that's not right. So I just wanted to do my part. He also added that the pizza he was supposed to deliver was unharmed and that it was subsequently enjoyed by the person who had ordered it.
Representatives from the Michigan State Police are commending a 13-year-old boy for his quick thinking and heroic actions this week after he recently thwarted an alleged kidnapper who was trying to abduct his younger sister. According to reports, the incident took place sometime on May 10th when the 8-year-old victim was in her own backyard in Alpena Township. She was looking around for mushrooms when out of nowhere, the 17-year-old suspect allegedly came up behind her, grabbed her while trying to put a hand around her mouth, and then started pulling her into the woods at the edge of the property. As this unfolded, the girl reportedly managed to scream, grabbing the attention of her 13-year-old brother Owen, who was inside the house playing video games. At first, Owen apparently thought his sister was just goofing around with friends, but when he heard a second scream, he felt uneasy and decided to double check. That's when, to his horror, he saw what was happening outside. While many people might have frozen at this terrifying sight, Owen reportedly jumped into action. After grabbing his slingshot, a marble, and a rock, he ran to his sister's aid, firing 2 shots. He struck the suspect in the head and the chest, allowing the 8-year-old to break free and escape. The 17-year-old was arrested later on, apparently bearing noticeable injuries from where he had been hit by the slingshot projectiles. He has since been charged with attempted kidnapping and other crimes. In an interview after the incident, Owen said that he simply got lucky. He said that he was really freaked out by the whole thing, but suggested it was fortunate that the target he was shooting at was a lot bigger than the Pepsi cans he usually practices on. Police, however, called Owen's actions extraordinary. They say that he may have saved his sister's life, and at the very least, likely prevented something seriously bad from happening to her. A Texas church pastor is being lauded for his heroic actions this week after he recently came to the defense of his elderly neighbors during the middle of a terrifying home invasion. According to reports, the incident unfolded on June 15th when Pastor Heath Haynes and his wife were enjoying a quiet day at their Northwest Houston home. They were sitting in a front room together when suddenly they heard someone yelling for help. It was their elderly neighbor, Sharon Cohen. Immediately, the couple got up and went outside, with Heath running ahead to see what was wrong. At first, he assumed it was some kind of medical emergency, though things took a terrifying turn when he caught up with Sharon on the sidewalk. She said that someone was attacking her 85-year-old husband, Earl, inside their house. As Heath ran towards the property, the front door slammed shut and locked. When he looked through the front window, he could see the suspect, later identified as 54-year-old Shane Jennings, on top of Earl, who he was pinning to the ground with a coat rack while rifling through his pockets. Unable to get inside, Heath began banging on the door and windows, only for Jennings to pretend like nothing was wrong and that he was the homeowner, saying that he would be right there. This continued until Heath yelled that he could see Jennings, who then headed towards an exit near the back of the house. At this point, the pastor's wife was already dialing 911, so he decided he would try his best to delay Jennings in whatever way he could. He pulled out his phone and began recording as he headed up the driveway at the side of the residence. Upon coming face to face with the suspect, Heath began questioning him, asking him what he was doing and why he was attacking Earl. Jennings denied everything and said that he hadn't done anything wrong. Seeing that Jennings had some car keys, Heath pinned him up against a fence, telling him to drop what he had in his hands. He did this until Jennings claimed that he couldn't breathe, at which point Heath let him go, believing that he wouldn't be able to escape the enclosed area. Jennings allegedly had other ideas though. Apparently still in possession of at least one set of car keys, he made a break for Earl's truck, managing to get inside and start the vehicle before Heath could stop him. Video footage of the incident appears to show Jennings running over a fence at the scene and crashing into another vehicle several times on the driveway before fleeing the scene in the stolen truck. Fortunately, his time on the run was short-lived, and Jennings was caught and arrested by police later that same day. He is now facing 6 felony charges, including aggravated assault of an elderly person and assault of a peace officer. Thankfully, it appears that neither Sharon nor Earl were seriously injured as a result of the terrifying incident. It's unclear exactly what Jennings' alleged motive was, though police now suspect that the crime was targeted. When he came to the door at the beginning of the incident, he reportedly knew Earl's name, at first telling Sharon that he wanted a glass of water and needed to use her bathroom, then saying that Earl owed him money. That's when he allegedly barged his way inside. On top of this, family members say that a few weeks prior, Earl returned home saying that he had been mugged, though at the time, no one knew what to make of this because he suffers from dementia. As for Heath Haynes, he reportedly credits his heroic intervention to his faith. In an interview, he said that he has a self-preservation instinct just like anyone else, but in the moment, he was, quote, acting on something that's deeper inside. He further attributed being in the right place at the right time to divine intervention, saying that he and his wife never usually sit in the room where they heard Sharon calling for help that day. Authorities in Solano County, California are extending their thanks to a courageous Good Samaritan this week after he took down an accused arsonist as he attempted to set multiple fires that police say could have easily spread to nearby businesses and homes. According to reports, it all started on July 8th when the Good Samaritan in question, Alex Bello, was on his way home from grocery shopping with his family in the city of Vallejo and spotted something strange. While looking out the window of his vehicle, Alex saw what appeared to be a man jumping around excitedly in a field near the intersection of Admiral Callahan Lane and Turner Parkway. At first, Alex thought the man was playing. However, his intrigue turned to panic a few moments later when he realized what was actually happening. The man was starting a fire and appeared to be throwing lit road flares into the field as well. Though he and a couple of other witnesses quickly called 911, as the situation got more out of control, Alex felt that he needed to do something. The field the suspect was in was extremely dry, the fire was spreading fast, and there were a number of homes and businesses a short distance away, including his own. When the suspect headed for a black Tesla, Alex got permission from 911 dispatchers to intervene. Using his mixed martial arts training from years ago, he was able to pull the man from the vehicle and put him in a hold. He said in a later interview that at the same time he was trying to be mindful about not hurting the suspect because he was very concerned about potentially getting into trouble after the fact. Thankfully, Alex was more than up to the task as he was able to hold the man until police could arrive and place him under arrest. It was soon discovered that the suspect had stolen the black Tesla he was trying to get into, and a crack pipe was reportedly found on his person. His name has not been released at the time of this recording. Following the incident, police extended their thanks to Alex for his courage and quick thinking, noting that things could have been much worse if the suspect had been allowed to continue. Even though firefighters were on the scene within minutes, officials say the crime destroyed 15 acres of vegetation, the equivalent of 11 football fields.
A Florida veteran is being applauded for his quick thinking and decisive action this week after he came to the aid of a victim who was being carjacked in the drive-through line of a coffee shop, ultimately helping police to take down the suspect. The whole thing unfolded one morning last week when retired Army officer Shane Spicer was waiting in the drive-through line at a Starbucks in the city of Ocala with his girlfriend and daughter. He had just woken up about 25 minutes earlier and had yet to receive his morning coffee when out of nowhere he found himself in the middle of a dramatic situation. While sitting inside his vehicle, Spicer saw a man run up to the SUV of the customer in front of him. The man then attempted to violently carjack the female driver, who was also pregnant. What Spicer didn't know is that the man, later identified as 39-year-old Michael Prouty, was already in the middle of a disturbing crime spree. A short time earlier, he allegedly broke into a home in Sumter County where he stole a vehicle and led police on a high-speed chase. Prouty had just crashed that stolen vehicle at a nearby intersection before attempting to carjack the pregnant victim. Upon seeing that the woman was in danger, Spicer reportedly sprung into action and ran over to her vehicle, entering through the passenger side door. At this point, Prouty attempted to flee, though Spicer was able to catch him and pin him against a nearby wall until police caught up and finally placed him under arrest. According to reports, Prouty is now facing a number of charges over the incidents, including fleeing and eluding, attempted carjacking, home invasion, battery on a person over 65, and grand theft of a vehicle. The 39-year-old reportedly has a lengthy criminal history dating back to the year 2000, which includes 13 felony convictions. In an interview after everything was over, Spicer said his actions were instinctual. He stated, quote, "I feel like if you've got the ability to watch out for someone, that you should," before saying, "I would just hope that someone would do the same for my family." It's also been reported that the attempted carjacking victim later reached out to thank Spicer for his help.
Authorities in Wisconsin say that a dramatic car chase came to a smelly end for one of 4 suspects this week after they attempted to flee the scene of a crash, only to find themselves thwarted by a couple of quick-thinking golfers. According to reports, the whole thing started at around 11:40 a.m. on November 15th, when police in the city of Glendale spotted a Dodge Durango that had allegedly been stolen in Plymouth, Minnesota. The vehicle was traveling on the 5400 block of Port Washington Road and was seen driving recklessly by officers who initiated a chase. When police deployed stop sticks to try and disable the Durango, the driver reportedly swerved into oncoming traffic, causing a crash with 2 other cars. Moments later, all 4 occupants of the stolen vehicle got out and took off running. While a couple of the suspects managed to get away, one of them was quickly caught. Another would soon be arrested, though not before making what would turn out to be quite a stomach-churning mistake. According to witnesses, one of the men ran onto the grounds of the nearby Lincoln Park golf course, where he attempted to hide inside a porta-potty on one of the fairways. Unfortunately for the suspect, he was spotted by a couple of golfers who realized what was going on and decided to lend a hand to police. Literally. To be more specific, they pushed over the porta-potty, causing it to fall on its side and giving officers enough time to catch up and apprehend the suspect. From the sounds of it, things were not pretty for the man after being toppled over. In an interview, one of the golfers involved said, quote, "It was really smelly, and he could hear the sloshing, so I can just imagine the stench." At the time of this recording, none of the suspects had been identified, and no formal charges had been announced. It also appears police are still searching for 2 of the suspects who managed to escape. Authorities in the city of Milford, Connecticut are applauding the actions of a Good Samaritan this week after he came to the aid of his neighbor during the middle of a terrifying and potentially deadly domestic violence incident. The whole thing started around 1:50 p.m. on November 25th when Milford police received a 911 call about a stabbing at a residence on Greer Circle. Officers arrived to find a female victim who was suffering from multiple knife wounds to her upper torso and chest area, as well as a male suspect who had suffered injuries to his head. The female victim and witnesses to the incident soon filled authorities in on what had happened. According to reports, the victim was in her bedroom at home that afternoon when her husband, 66-year-old Kevin Conway, came in and started arguing with her. Things quickly escalated when Conway allegedly stated that, quote, "The last time he didn't kill her, but this time he was going to." Apparently, Conway was referring to an incident that took place back in March where he had attacked his wife and bit her on the leg. Following the assault, the wife had obtained an order of protection against Conway. However, in October, she had allowed him to move back in. After making the comment about killing his wife this week, Conway reportedly tried to deliver on the threat, returning to the bedroom armed with 3 knives. He allegedly stabbed her, though she was able to escape and run across the street for help. The victim hid behind a male neighbor who was doing some gardening, telling him, quote, "Kevin is trying to kill me." The neighbor tried to get Conway to put down his weapon several times. However, he refused, saying, quote, "She was going to die, and he was going to die," and, quote, "You don't understand. This woman has screwed up my life 3 ways to Sunday." Realizing that he had no choice when Conway refused to back down, the neighbor reportedly struck him in the head with a leaf blower he had been using. The 66-year-old fell to the ground and was apparently incapacitated until police could arrive and place him under arrest. At the time of this recording, Conway is facing multiple charges, including first-degree assault, attempted murder, violation of a protective order, and second-degree threatening in connection with the attack. The victim says that she believes her husband was possibly under the influence of alcohol and prescription medication at the time of the incident. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.